All right. Hello, everybody. This is Swift. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Major League Hacking. I could not be more excited to be here today with an amazing group of technologists from the Solana ecosystem. We're here because this month, October, is one of my favorite months of the year. It's DigitalOcean's Hacktoberfest. It is a month-long celebration of open source and all things around the community that builds the software that literally every person and developer and company in the world depends on. Now, I had the privilege several years ago of actually immersing myself in the Solana ecosystem. And, as somebody who does not come from a Web3 background, I can tell you that it was super challenging at that time to figure out all of these new paradigms and what they meant and how I used them and how I contextualized them around all of the things that I was building every day. Things have changed so much over the last couple of years. And this is probably one of the single greatest times in history, not only to be becoming a developer or a technology creator, but to be getting into an ecosystem like the Solana ecosystem, which is thriving. And we'll hear a little bit more about that today. So I have three panelists that I'm really excited to bring up here. Let me introduce everybody. We'll get you all on stage. So we've got Nate, we've got Guy, and we have Adrian. How's it going, everybody?
Hi, guys.
It's going
Hey,
great.
it's pretty good.
Amazing. Well, I'm so excited to have all of you here with me today. Happy Hacktoberfest. I know this is a major holiday for many of us in the open source community. And I could not be more excited for this discussion, as I said. I want to start off with some introductions. So why don't we start with Guy today, since you're our official representative from the Solana Foundation here in ecosystem. So Guy, tell us a little bit about who you are, where do you work? And we'd love to hear a little bit about your open source journey as well, given that we're here for Hacktoberfest.
Sure. So I have a great relationship with open source. It's how I came up onto the developer world. So my background is as a full stack engineer. So I work in places like MetaMask and Vercel. So a lot of contributions into the web stack. And I started recently, around I think 6 months ago, at Solana Foundation to talk about onboarding developers, education. And so far, most of my work has been showing people how to get into the ecosystem. So I'm super excited for today.
Amazing. Well, welcome. We're super excited to have you and to learn a lot about Solana and the way you're thinking about education for developers. Why don't we pop over to Nate next? Nate, I know you're also responsible for helping to spearhead getting people into the Solana ecosystem. Tell us a little bit about who you are, the company you're working on, and your open source journey as well.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Nate. I'm one of the founders of Colosseum. Before that, actually, I was a career software engineer for about 8 years. So I've done a little bit of open source work. I've worked at a number of startups in San Francisco as well. Most recently at Stripe, actually, before Colosseum. But yeah, Colosseum is a number of things. We are a venture fund, so we invest in early stage startups. We also run a startup accelerator alongside that. But we also run large online hackathons, so sort of similar to MLH in some ways. But our hackathons are very narrowly focused on Solana. So we are really trying to incentivize new idea creation, invention, and especially startup formation on Solana. So we run these twice a year. These are big online competitions. They're open to everyone from students to working professionals. They draw in upwards of 10,000 developers each time, upwards of 1,500 projects submissions. So pretty competitive. And there's actually one going on right now. So we'll share a link to that later. But yeah, super excited about that.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I can't wait to dig in more on that too. But last but not least, Adrian, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background, where you're working, and about your open source journey too.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm the founder of CargoBill. It's stablecoin payments for supply chain. I'm a full stack engineer, co-founded kind of the org back at U of I. That's kind of how I got my blockchain start. And so just hacked in a number of hackathons, did a lot of kind of education there and building out kind of like open source, particularly around the U of I ecosystem. And then, yeah, fast forward to kind of the past few years, competed in a number of the Solana hackathons. And we recently kind of like placed in the most recent hackathon, did the Colosseum accelerator. That's been a great experience. So yeah.
Well, fantastic. I'm so excited to have this group. Adrian, I do want to start with a couple of questions for you. I think that it's going to make a lot of sense to start with the developer journey side here first, and then I'd love to talk about Colosseum, and then maybe we'll back out into the whole Solana ecosystem. But I have to assume you didn't start out knowing that you wanted to be a Web3 developer. It sounds like you had some background in the what we call Web2 space, I suppose, here. But can you talk to us a little bit about that journey? You know, you went through this yourself, and now you're really immersed in this space. But I'd love to hear about that from your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Got very much started not in Web3 when I was still kind of like in college. It was all about Web2. Web3 was this like super tangential like thing. Nobody really at kind of like U of I was talking about it, even from like, you know, the engineering school. And so it was just, I got into it because of like some friends, but had really gotten started in full stack engineering and specifically like mobile development. So I was like diving deep on mobile, doing a bunch of like kind of apps, like working with Java, that sort of thing. And then started obviously progressing kind of like in the stack from there. And so built kind of like control systems for liquid rockets, some AI for auto market industry. This was before like the LLMs of today. So we were like, you know, building machine learning models and that sort of thing, a lot more low level. But really incredible to kind of see where the space has come today. And yeah.
Wow. Okay, so you have been drawn to hard tech problems. It sounds like from the beginning, which I guess that tracks here with some of your experience and where you're going now. But yeah, can you talk to us a little bit about that experience of learning Web3 like development and paradigms? Like, how is it different than the Web2 world that you came from? How is it similar, and what are the strategies you use to actually make that transition?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, the reason that we had started the blockchain org at U of I was because we knew that there was this thing called blockchain. We had some friends that had invested in Bitcoin and Ethereum kind of like a little earlier on. But we as developers, like we got excited because we realized finally like this blockchain thing isn't just something that these like finance people or like, you can kind of just invest in. I can actually build like applications on Ethereum and Solana. And so once we had kind of learned that, that's like what piqued our interest, because now we can build like real solutions using our tech skills. And so, yeah, we kind of co-founded the org strictly to like learn more about it ourselves. So we would do like weekly deep dives. Just at the time, there weren't that many like resources. It was like you're reading a lot of white papers, reading some like obscure blog posts that somebody wrote, and kind of just like trying to piece it all together. So it was really just us learning about it and like diving deep into tech. And then as we kind of started doing more of that, then we started getting some kind of support from like Solana and like others. And so that was like, we really saw kind of the ecosystem go from basically having no resources to today. I think Solana's done a really, really great job where like, if I know nothing about Web3, maybe I'm really new to development even, it's actually really easy to get started. But I think the biggest takeaway kind of from that journey was that even if you know absolutely nothing, if you just kind of dive deep, reason by first principles, and today leverage those resources that exist out there, you can absolutely go from zero to like an incredible understanding in an incredibly short amount of time. So I definitely would recommend to anybody out there that's like concerned that like they're diving, into the deep end. Like, don't worry, you can absolutely work through it. And there's a lot of people out there and resources to help you today.
Wow. Well, I mean, it sounds like community was like a big piece of this journey as well, like having other people around you who are learning these things together. And, I said this to y'all when we were just getting started, but I was learning Rust so that I could experiment in the Solana ecosystem a few years ago. And it was, there wasn't a lot out there, right? I had to figure out a lot by doing. Gui, I'd actually love to hear from you. Like, things have changed a lot. What are the go-to resources you would point somebody to who wants to make this transition from this Web 2 developer to Web 3? What are you seeing as the most important paths right now?
Obviously, I think that what has changed a lot is that there's a different depth of and breadth of resources. So obviously, not everybody learns the same way. So we have a bunch of resources. We have a lot of cohort-based courses, which you can take if somebody who likes to come and have an instructor guiding things. We can leave a few links down there. But also, we have our own Solana Foundation bootcamp, which is a series of, I think, 10 to 20 hours of videos on YouTube, which we will be refreshing. It's a bit out of date, but most of the code is still kept up to date. Other than this, we have a way to get started quickly with templates. So you can sort, we have a CLI called Create Solana Dap. So that's an easy one to, just get started, the examples. But obviously, there's also a lot of great programming. Like Colosseum is doing a lot of programming to, like keep people engaged. So yeah, there's almost endless ways of getting started. Just finding the one which communicates the most to your learning style, I think.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, right? Like, I think that's one of the most important things for people in the chat or on the stream to think about, right? Like, Solana is an ecosystem. It's more than just a library or a framework or a protocol. It actually is way more than that. There's other developers, there's companies, there's foundations, there's so many people investing in this ecosystem and helping you to get started. And so, there's a lot out there that you can tap into that, to Guy's point, fits your learning style and your needs. Nate, I'd love to flip over to you to talk about a couple of things. I think the first thing I want to start about is, I have to assume at these hackathons, you're getting a mix of people who are, Web3 natives in some way, and some who are making that transition. Guy already called out that you guys are doing some great work in terms of supporting people learning Solana and helping them get going. But can you talk a little bit about your strategies for your community, like how you're supporting people who are learning these tools for the first time?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the cool thing about Colosseum's hackathons is that they can kind of meet you wherever you're at. They're actually very long running, so they're typically about 5 weeks long. So that's like almost enough time to start from zero and onboard yourself to building on Solana, especially if you've built on another blockchain, like maybe Ethereum. But even if not, that's a long time, right? And so it kind of gives people who are at different parts in their journey some time to like do educational things before they jump into project development. Throughout that 5 weeks, we run live streamed sessions. A lot of them are actually with the Solana Foundation's DevRel team. So we rely on them pretty heavily. They're amazing. They have all the resources online and some of the videos that Guy mentioned. But then the live stream sessions are a place for people to come and ask questions and just get access in real time to those folks. We also have a Discord. And so the team is in there. We have some other kind of knowledgeable Solana developers that are in that Discord, just watching it, that are able to answer questions as they come up. So I would say like that's probably the biggest thing, is like more of an interactive back and forth as questions come up that we offer, as compared to just like a static, resource on a website. But yeah, I think that everything that Guy mentioned is also still very relevant. We'll share the link again to the hackathon sign up page, but we have a developer resources section that we've curated a bit as well, that has some of what we think are like the best entry points for new folks.
That's awesome. Well, I want to transition a little bit into talking about like the context of startups and companies within, the Solana ecosystem as well, because, I'm sure all of you are watching these trends the same way I am, but this seems to be one of the greatest times in history to become a founder, right? Like, you can do way more with way less. The technology is changing so rapidly on every front. Like, there's just so much opportunity. And Nate, I think that you have probably a really interesting perspective, because not only are you a founder yourself, but you're also a VC, and you also are supporting lots of other founders. I'd love to start with your own kind of founder journey, though, right? Like, what is it like to actually start a company inside the Solana ecosystem? Like, how do you actually go about doing that? And what advice do you have for people who are thinking about that same thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite a journey. I think, as any founder will tell you, it's definitely a roller coaster. There's a lot of things to learn as you get up that curve, but overall, I would say it's been a pretty amazing experience. Yeah, we're a little unique, right? Because we started a fund, and so that involves like this kind of bridge that's kind of go between with traditional investors and then startup founders. So we kind of it's like you have the traditional finance or tech world, and then you have like the VCs, and then you have like these early stage founders that get to do all the really cool experimental stuff. But yeah, we do have some kind of technical components, since we run our hackathons fully online on our own platform, which was custom built. I actually built out the majority of that platform initially before we hired any engineers. And yeah, I can definitely say like AI tools today have made it much, much easier to be like a solo or a duo or you know, maybe trio of founders and produce a pretty complex, sophisticated product just much, much faster, and to make changes and iterate much faster. So I would say just like right off the bat, lean into that as much as you can. Like you want to really become an expert on the cutting edge AI code gen tools. They're extremely good. And we see that too with the founders we invest in. I mean, I'm sure Adrian can speak to this, but it's a team of two. Adrian's the technical one, and they've produced a very robust, very professional product for supply chain, you know, shipping companies basically. And that I don't think would be possible as quickly without AI tools. So it's something we look for sure when we invest in folks, is like familiarity with that, technical ability to just kind of build and iterate very, very quickly. I would say just like, yeah, don't be too perfectionist about what you ship out there. Just move as fast as you can is like a big thing that we took to heart as well.
Yeah, I definitely want to ask Adrian about his experience in the accelerator here. The thing before we do transition over there, the thing I wanted to ask as well is the connection with the hackathons and the accelerator or the investing. And it sounds like that philosophy you have around people who can ship quickly and like be iterative, that would naturally align with like a hacker mindset. And so hackathons might be a great place to find those people. But what is the relationship between the hackathons? Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah. You mean in terms of like, how do we use the hackathon to filter for startup founders?
Either filter for them, support them. Like, I'm curious what the connection is there, because, you know, I think a lot of
Yeah,
people in the hackathon ecosystem might not necessarily see that naturally. And so I'm curious, like, how you're thinking about that from a strategy perspective.
totally. Yeah, it's a balance for sure. I mean, from our perspective, it's the core thing is exactly what you said, which is like oftentimes the best startup founders are people with this sort of hacker mindset who can move very quickly and try out new ideas all the time and get validation from users even very, very early on. And if you're able to do that loop quickly enough and effectively enough, you'll, you know, chances are you'll likely find your way to a sustainable product that gets product market fit. But that starts with the ability to move and build very quickly. And so, yeah, that is one big part of our thesis, that by running these hackathons, we'll be able to identify those people and give them the support they need. I think having the hackathons be long running, like the 5-week long versus just a weekend event, is also pretty key. We even like considered not calling them hackathons early on. We sort of toyed with the idea of calling them startup competitions or something else like in that realm. But just decided on hackathon because it's such like a globally recognizable term. And so we wanted to kind of piggyback off of that. But we do try and distinguish them, like at least qualitatively, from, you know, a weekend hackathon where it's just like a couple days, maybe you stay up all night, drink a bunch of Red Bull, and like you make a lot of friends and you kind of learn some stuff, but you don't typically take that product and then turn it into a company, right? Whereas our focus is very much on like, we want you to bring the thing that you think can be your startup, at least initially. And we understand that you might pivot and change it over time, but we want to see like your best shot at building something that you think could become a startup. So yeah, that's kind of the approach.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right? I think hackathons are really excellent for filtering out teams of people, right? I met both of my sets of co-founders for both of my businesses at hackathons. It's just like a really intense building period and biases towards this mindset of creation and iteration that I love. So I think that made a lot of sense. Do you guys have examples of companies that have come out of the hackathon that have gone through the accelerator and you know, gone on to be successful in some way?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, yeah, we've got Adrian right here who can probably talk about this.
Yeah, we're gonna hear one firsthand.
Shortly before the hackathon. But yeah, we have funded now 30 plus different projects that have come out of the hackathon. Many of them
That's
have
incredible.
gone on to raise seed rounds and sort of built out their products, gotten, you know, many, many more users and scaled up. Most of these products are sort of either on-chain finance, so DeFi products. Some of them are kind of more like infrastructural tools. We actually funded one of the leading dev tools on Solana, which is called Surfpool, which is sort of supporting all developers on Solana. It's grown quite a bit. But yeah, it's been really across the board. We actually are not even though we grow the Solana ecosystem and invest in Solana-based founders, we're not really opinionated about what type of business you want to build. We're really kind of just founder first. So if you want to build a stablecoin payments product that doesn't really have crypto on the front of it, right? Just crypto rails on the back. That's great. We love that. We'll fund that. But if you want to build a crypto meme coin trading tool that's just like really for on-chain traders to speculate, that's great too. Like we will support that as well. So yeah, it's definitely much more about like the founding team for us than it is about the specific products.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I was looking at, so we follow the Electric Capital ecosystem report that they put out every year really heavily at MLH, just to understand, the ecosystem of developers around Web3 and what's going on. And two things that really stood out to me reading through that again, just before the panel to catch myself back up was, last year, Solana was the fastest growing developer ecosystem across every, Web3 ecosystem there was. And on top of that, the Solana ecosystem is responsible for like more than half of NFT minting transactions. And I think it was also the number one for DEXs as well. So it's like actually like tons of really interesting opportunities for founders to build on. Obviously lots of developers in it. So those things all really bode well for it. Adrian, I'd love to transition to you and talk about your experience, going through Colosseum and did you do the hackathon as well as the accelerator? Sounds like you did both.
Correct.
Oh man. Okay. Tell us this journey. Like I got to hear the whole thing. Like walk us from the beginning to through your experience.
Sure. So I actually met my co-founder at a hackathon before that. And so we kind of just hacked around some concept ideas and then kind of realized, so he's been in the logistics industry for over like 15 years. So very much kind of like a subject matter expert. That's just something from, previous projects that I've worked on that I really love is, somebody that intimately understands the problems of an industry and can really like help you understand kind of the nuances. And then, I as a developer can kind of like come in and, ideate and like build kind of the solution for that. So yeah, we had kind of met, understood kind of the requirements. There was like, for our specific product, there was a number of like compliance requirements that we knew we would have to kind of like check. So we had kind of like done that. And then, the Solana hackathon was actually going on. And we're like, almost as an afterthought, we were like, oh, maybe we're kind of like building this anyway. Maybe we should just like apply and see what we can kind of like do in like the 5 weeks. Like originally, I think we had a slightly longer like timeline, but we're like, 5 weeks, we can ship something and, get some users, get some feedback and see kind of just like what comes of it. So yeah, we spent kind of the first like week or two just really talking to users, like friends that my co-founder had in the industry, and just really intimately understanding kind of like what is the bare minimum kind of like version or iteration of this that we need that the users would really want and would solve a really big problem for them. So we that was kind of like the initial part of the hackathon. Then we spent about like 2 weeks like really building out kind of that core feature set that they had asked for. And then kind of towards the tailor end, it was just like rounding it out, flushing out like the product, like putting it actually in the hands of users. And I think like something that Colosseum looks for a lot, and that we, you don't usually have in other hackathons. Like most hackathons, right? You just like hack for a weekend and you're kind of done. But because you have this long process, you can be talking to users for like multiple like weeks, right? And so by the end of it, we did actually have some traction. Like we were, moving tens of thousands of dollars in payments already by the end of it. So I think that's kind of like a really big takeaway is, even if you don't necessarily plan for this to become its own company, it's like a wonderful ability to just run the entire like process all the way from like concept of idea through actually like getting users. And I think that's like something that's pretty rare. Like you don't usually have that sort of like ecosystem support as just like a solo founder or like a small team that kind of like Solana and Colosseum can provide. So very, very like useful and helpful, like whether you're planning to go and just like work another job later on, or, actually turn that into your like product. That's like really, really helpful for flushing a real product out.
That's awesome. So you went through the hackathon and you guys did the accelerator as well. And can you talk a little bit about, okay, so you had this early traction, you had something built, like obviously people were excited about it. Like what has the journey been around like bringing it to market and actually like turning it into a big meaningful thing here?
Absolutely. So yeah, the accelerator for us was taking kind of that initial traction that we kind of saw, and for lack of a better term, like helping accelerate it. And I think there were a number of things within the product, like various feature sets, product directions, like GTM, flushing all of those things out was like super, super important for us. And so Colosseum was really helpful throughout that like process. And so, today we're kind of live in beta with the full kind of like product and kind of just like scaling that feature set. We'll be doing that for, the next year or so. But the accelerator was really crucial in helping like iron out all of the kinks in GTM. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, what an incredible journey. And I always love to hear a story about a company that has an origin story rooted in hackathons in some way. So very, very cool stuff. And congratulations on all the success so far. Gui, I want to flip back over to you to talk a little bit about the Solana and MLH ecosystems together. So I know that this is not all out in the wild yet, but it's coming soon. And it sounds like Solana and MLH are going to get an opportunity to do some deeper work together over the next year or so. Can you talk a little bit about how you're thinking about developer communities, hackathons, like this transition from Web 2 to Web 3 founders? I know it's like it's so broad, but like this time, like we have to be thinking broad. And I'm curious, like from your perspective at the Solana Foundation, like how are you thinking about that?
Yes, so one thing that we see is that there's a huge amount of opportunities, a lot of things are still to be built. There's the capital is there, the users are there, distribution exists. So there's so much in the Solana ecosystem that is still untapped and ready to be grabbed. And yet, often when we go to hackathons, people come to our workshops and it's always out of curiosity, right? Like we talk to these people who hear about it. They hear about the meme coins. They hear about, like what's going on in the news. But then they start to look at the tech and they realize that, okay, this is deep. This is technology. This technology is like fun to learn. And like, especially it nerd snipes people a little bit. So one of the things that we talked a lot when we were working on this partnership, worked a lot with your team, was trying to understand how do we make this understood by people. And obviously, like the Solana Foundation is a nonprofit. We're not meant to have like a full-on organization. And you guys were simply the best people already talking to all these Web2 founders, all these students. So we thought, let's deepen that relationship. So there's a lot that's going to be happening from, I'm not sure yet everything that we can say. So do I have your go ahead to hint a bit at the future steps?
You can hint at some stuff, yes, for sure.
Sounds good. So obviously for people, it's getting real life experience. So we're going to have a multi-tiered approach from the fellowship, from challenges, from 100 days of Solana. We're going to be present in almost in a big bunch of your hackathons that you're sponsoring and present. So yeah, it's going to be a really deep relationship, and it's going to help people then get into the ecosystem. And when they are in the ecosystem, they're not forgotten about. That's where Colosseum comes in. That's where all the learning opportunities come after. So now it's a full-on approach to helping people build that.
Amazing. Well, that's so exciting. I could not be more jazzed about the idea of getting Solana's technology out into the hands of folks across the MLH ecosystem. I know we're coming up on time here, so what I'd love to do in closing is just any like closing words, resources, things you want to point people at, open source, Solana, anything, anything and everything above. I'll start with you, Gui.
Yeah, so just reiterating that if you're learning, there's a resource for everything. There's even like a game now called Rust Undead that gamifies the learning approach. So I'll share it in our chat. I'm not sure if there's an ability to reserve that chat on their platforms. There's a lot of ways to learn, and especially Colosseum is going on right now. So I'm going to let the final action items to my peers here.
We'll pass it to Adrian. I do have the link up already for anybody who's interested in participating in the Colosseum hackathon that's going on. That short link that's up right now, you can use that to go directly to the page, or you can just Google Colosseum and find it from there as well. But Adrian, any closing thoughts or resources, anything you want to tell people before we wrap up here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, coming in oftentimes like your team isn't very big. You might be kind of like a solo founder. And so I think there's a lot of great resources in the ecosystem. Like so much of the community is so willing to help. And there's like lots of people just like you that are looking to get started. So I think you can find incredible people, just like put yourself kind of out there, and you'll oftentimes like surprise yourself. And, you know, once you kind of like do find kind of like your teammates, definitely can't iterate enough. Just like talking to some like real users, talking to some people that face a real problem, and solving that. Like it doesn't always have to be like Web3 native. It can also be just like Web2, some like problem that you face. There's a lot of opportunities, like the other folks have said, to just like solve problems that people face on a real like daily basis.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. And Nate, last but not least, man, obviously participating in the hackathon seems like a really good starting point. Any other last minute words of wisdom or things you want to call out?
Yeah, I mean, the hackathon's the main one. I see you have the link up, so I appreciate that. You can go to our website, colosseum.com, Colosseum spelled like the Roman Colosseum. Maybe the last thing I'll say is just like, if you're not super familiar with the crypto space, like I wasn't until fairly recently, you might think that it's like a little scammy, or it's like this very niche thing compared to Web 2. And I would say like, take the time to look a little bit closer. Like there's a couple really interesting stats I'll give. You might be surprised that one of probably the fastest growing company coming out of Y Combinator, the startup accelerator, is actually a company built on top of Solana. It's called Axiom. You can look it up. It was founded by two very, very young founders. It hit 100 million in revenue in about 4 months, I think a little under 4 months. That's a Solana company. Another one is that Solana has absolutely dominated in application revenue. So that is people building apps on top of Solana have made, I think it's like $1 billion in revenue over the past couple quarters. And this is far more than any other blockchain. So there is a lot of opportunity here. People are building real meaningful things with real meaningful revenue. So it's worth a look, even if you think Web3 or crypto might not be for you, or you think it's particularly niche. There's actually a lot of really interesting stuff going on there. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, hey, listen, I want to say thank you to all three of you. This was such a wonderful conversation. I could not be more excited about the future of the Solana ecosystem right now. I think it's a great time to be building in it. I know how busy your life is as a founder and as somebody who's leading one of these educational ecosystems. So thank you for the time, guys. And, you know, happy Hacktoberfest to all of you as well.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much.
Of course.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Well, I'll just say a couple of closing words for everybody in the chat here, and then we'll end the stream. But you know, again, this is a great time to be thinking about getting into a new community or new space, whether that's open source or Solana. There are so many resources out there right now for you to really bring your dreams and ideas to life, learn new skills that are going to set you apart in the market and that are going to carry you into the future of your career. We at Major League Hacking are super committed to helping the next generation of technologists, no matter who you are and what your background is, actually bridge that gap and go and launch your career and build amazing things. If there are other things we can do to be helpful, please let us know. As I mentioned before, I'm Swift. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Major League Hacking. Throughout the month of October, as part of Hacktoberfest, I'm going to be streaming every Monday and Thursday. We will be announcing those in the MLH Discord. Typically, they're going to happen sometime between 10 a.m. Eastern and 12:30 p.m. Eastern. So keep your eyes there. We'll try to post those streams farther in advance so you can put them on your calendar. But we are going to be cutting up these videos into little produced shorts as well for you to follow along with some of the best tips and best practices that come out of these conversations. So with that, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you again to all of our wonderful panelists. I'm so proud to help lead this community and to help all of you get started on your journeys into open source, into Solana, and wherever life takes you. So happy Hacktoberfest and happy hacking, everybody.